My boyfriend once bragged to his friends that I was as fat as a pig, then turned around and started seeing a 40-year-old woman, older and loaded with money. He said straight to my face, "I'd rather date an old lady than some fat chick who eats all day." I stayed quiet. But a month later, the police knocked on his door with an arrest warrant for extortion. And this time, the person standing in front of him as the key witness was the very fat chick he had looked down on more than anyone in his life. I was fumbling around in the kitchen when the clock on the wall struck 6 on the dot. The table was already set, and the smell of roasted chicken breast drifted through the small apartment. I was placing whole wheat bread on a plate while glancing over at the new leather jacket I had bought, neatly laid out on the sofa. It was a gift I had carefully chosen for Mark. I smiled softly, picking up the jacket. Has it really been 2 years already? Time goes by so fast. Mark keeps telling me I should eat healthier, but today is a special day. I lifted the jacket and checked the size again. Size L. I let out a small sigh, looked down at my stomach, and hesitated for a moment. Maybe I should have gone with an XL, but it is fine. Just keep this one. Maybe it will be the push I need to finally lose some weight. The sound of my phone ringing pulled me out of my thoughts. I reached for it, and Mark's name lit up on the screen. I answered quickly, my voice a little excited. "Mark, you remember what we have planned for tonight, right? I already made dinner." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then a voice as cold as ice came through. "Amanda, something urgent came up at work. There is an emergency meeting." I froze, my fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the jacket. "But today is our 2-year anniversary." His voice snapped back, as if I had just interrupted something incredibly important. "Just get back to whatever you were doing. Stop being childish. Drop it." The call ended. I kept the phone pressed to my ear for a few more seconds. The screen had already gone dark, but my hand still had not lowered. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, the smell of roasted chicken breast now suddenly meaningless. It was close to midnight when Mark finally came home. I pretended to be asleep on the couch, the dim light in the room just bright enough for me to see him put his bag down and head straight for the bathroom. The bathroom door closed. The sound of running water started up in a steady rhythm. The phone he had left on the table suddenly lit up, lighting again and again as messages came in. I glanced over. On the screen was the name of the group chat. The Brus. My heart pounded. I hesitated. Then, as if some invisible force was pushing me, I stood up. I should not look. I should not. But I picked up the phone. I unlocked it with the fingerprint I had registered on his device. The screen flared to life. The lines of messages appeared in front of me like a punch I never saw coming. "So how are things with you and Amanda? She is so fat. I cannot believe you have been with her for 2 years. I am with her because she is gentle, easy to handle, and she can cook. But now I have found myself a sugar mama. This one is rich and knows how to spoil me. So what are you going to do? I am going to dump that pig. Who does she think she is?" I went numb. My hand let the phone slip onto the wooden floor with a soft thud. Everything seemed to freeze in that moment. I whispered, hollow, as if my soul had left my body. "A pig. Is that all 2 years of love are worth?" The water in the bathroom suddenly stopped. The door swung open. Mark stepped out, hair still wet, a towel wrapped around his body. His eyes went straight to the phone lying on the floor. "What were you doing with my phone?" I did not even have time to answer. He walked over and snatched the phone up as if it were some priceless treasure. Without bothering to look back at me, he grabbed his jacket and walked out the door. The door slammed shut. I sank down in the middle of the living room, still clutching the corner of a napkin I had not even finished folding. The tray of food on the table had gone cold, the anniversary dinner that had never begun. And maybe it never would. As soon as the sound of the door closing faded behind me, I rushed out onto the balcony. My palms were still shaking from the shock of reading those messages on Mark's phone. I gripped the railing to steady myself, my breathing coming fast and completely out of control. I kept repeating to myself in my head, "This cannot be happening. This cannot be real." Under the streetlights, right in front of the building entrance, I saw Mark. He had not gone anywhere for an emergency meeting like he said. He was standing close beside a well-dressed, middle-aged woman. She was wearing a cream fur coat, holding a red Birkin bag that stood out under the light. Mark leaned down and kissed her on the cheek. My whole body went rigid. The woman turned the bag toward Mark and smiled proudly. "Honey, I just bought this new Birkin. Is it pretty?" Mark slipped an arm around her waist, his voice so sweet it made my skin crawl. "It is beautiful, but not as beautiful as you. Here, try this strawberry." He picked up a strawberry from the pastry box and lifted it to her mouth like he was taking care of a longtime lover. The scene was far too intimate for anyone to pretend they were just a casual fling. I clutched the balcony railing so hard the joints in my fingers turned white. So, this was his emergency meeting. Wind rushed up from the street below, cold enough to burn my skin, but I could not feel anything except the pain tightening in my chest. I stood there for a long time, until the two of them got into a Mercedes and disappeared into the stream of cars in the distance. I walked back inside like a shadow. My heart was pounding, and my hands were ice cold. The plate of salad and chicken breast was still on the table, a reminder of how excited I had been not long ago. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number in one last moment of desperation. When he picked up, my voice was shaking. "Mark, where are you?" His voice came through, full of annoyance. "Stop bothering me." I swallowed the humiliation burning in my throat. "But I saw you down there, with a woman." A small laugh sounded on the other end. Mark's voice came back, dripping with contempt. "Good. Then you know. You know something? I would rather be with an old woman than stay with a pig who does nothing but cook all day like you." I heard the woman burst out laughing, her voice echoing through the speaker. "Well said, honey." Mark went on, his voice growing colder with every word. "Did you hear me clearly? Do not ever contact me again." The call cut off. I stood frozen for a few seconds, as if someone had just slapped me across the face. Then my legs gave out and I collapsed onto the living room floor. I could barely feel anything at all. Only one sentence kept ringing in my head. A pig. Only good for cooking. So that is all it ever was. Tears welled up and burned down my cheeks. I reached for the leather jacket I had carefully chosen for our 2-year anniversary. The gift I had prepared with all my hope. I held it tight against my chest, my tears falling onto the soft leather. "Mark, you are truly cruel. But no, I will not let you get away with this so easily." I sat in the dark room, images from the past spinning through my mind. Each memory that surfaced made me shudder with shame. Every word, every look from Mark and his friends replayed in slow motion, forcing me to see clearly the truth I had been avoiding all this time. I remembered that afternoon in the park so clearly, just a month ago. The two of us were walking along a path covered in golden leaves. I thought it was a peaceful romantic date. But Mark looked over at me with an annoyed expression, then pressed his hand against my stomach. He spoke as if he were offering some heartfelt advice. "You should work out more. I can introduce you to a trainer." I stiffened at his touch. I lowered my head and forced a small smile. "But you said you liked me the way I am." Mark let out a laugh, the kind of awkward chuckle that still carried obvious criticism. "I do like you, but your health matters more. And besides, I do not want people to get the wrong idea about you. You know, standing next to me, you should fee." I just froze where I was standing. A bitter feeling rose all the way up my throat. Looking back now, those were not words of concern. They were a reminder that he felt ashamed to be seen with me, that he was afraid other people would see him walking next to a girl who did not meet his standards of perfection. I kept telling myself to let it go, to believe he was saying it for my own good. But now I understand, it was only the beginning of deeper cuts. Another memory surfaced. So clear, my hands started to shake. 2 weeks ago, my phone rang and messages began flooding the screen. Mark texted me first. "Eat dinner on your own tonight, okay? I am going out for drinks with a business partner." My heart sank a little, but I still texted back that I understood. I always understood, always sympathized, always found excuses to justify his indifference. I had logged into Mark's account because I was suspicious. A few minutes later, a strange message popped up. From Mike, Mark's best friend. I opened it, and it felt like the blood stopped flowing in my veins. "Are you seriously bringing that pig to the party tonight?" I went stiff. Before I could even process it, another message came in, this time from Mark himself. "Relax. I already told her to stay home." I almost dropped my phone. My hands went ice cold. I read those messages over and over until I had every word memorized. That night, I cried until I could barely breathe, but the next morning, I made up with Mark again. I was so afraid of losing him that I accepted being called a pig right behind my back. I soothed myself by saying it was just guys joking around. Looking back now, I gave up my own self-respect just to hold on to a relationship that had already lost all its worth. I looked around the apartment I was in now. The painful memories wove together, tightening around me like an invisible net. I picked up a photo of the two of us from our vacation last year. My smile in it looked so foolish. Mark's smile was distant, like he was only acting for the picture instead of giving me any real affection. I stared straight into my own eyes reflected on the glass of the picture frame. Every word, every action, all of it had been humiliation wrapped in the disguise of love. I had shut my eyes to it, lying to myself that it was sacrifice for the sake of our relationship. Tears fell onto the photo, spreading into long streaks. No, this was not love. This was exploitation. A game played by a conceited man, and I had been his puppet for far too long. I set the frame down and rose slowly. Stepping in front of the mirror, I saw a tired face, but eyes that looked brighter than ever. The last tears fell, soft and light, like the end of a long storm. I wiped my face and took a deep breath. Those memories were no longer wounds. They were fuel. It was time to change. I would not let anyone trample my worth ever again. I sat in front of my computer screen in the dark apartment, the only light coming from a small desk lamp that washed over my tear-stained face. The clock read 2 a.m. I had not slept for 2 nights. My mind spun with the insults Mark had hurled at me without a second thought. They echoed like blades scraping across my heart, each stroke cutting down to the bone. I picked up my phone and mindlessly scrolled through social media. My finger suddenly stopped. A new photo had appeared on my feed. 2 people in expensive swimwear, cheek to cheek, their smiles blazing. The caption beneath it made my whole body go cold. Thank you to my wonderful man. Mark, you have shown me what real happiness is. I stared at Mark's all too familiar face in the picture. Next to him was a powerful woman I recognized immediately. Stella Kane, wife of finance tycoon Richard Kane, the most powerful woman on Wall Street. My hand trembling, I moved the cursor to Stella's profile page. Every photo, every status update felt like a slap in the face. They were wrapped in each other's arms in the Bahamas, having dinner on a yacht, laughing together over glasses of rosé, while I was sitting alone in a cold apartment, crying. Real happiness. You call that happiness when it is built on someone else's betrayal and lies. Mark, you really do not have a shred of humanity left. 3 days later, I stood in front of Richard Kane's private office door. The most powerful man I had ever dared to face. He sat silently behind a walnut desk, a wall of glass behind him, looking out over the entire city. You must be Amanda, right? I have heard about you from my wife's young friend. I tried to keep my voice steady even though my palms were drenched in sweat. Mr. Kane, I am here because... He did not let me finish. He slid a folder across the desk toward me, his eyes as cold as steel. I know everything, and I know what you are thinking. But childish revenge is pointless. Kane pressed a button on a remote. The large screen flickered on, showing a clip of Mark brushing Stella's hair back during a private dinner. His voice was crystal clear. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever met. Kane raised an eyebrow and looked at me. My throat tightened. My mouth opened, but no words came out. How did you get all of this? He smirked, did not answer, and simply stood up and walked toward the window. My wife and I married for mutual benefit. This is not the first time she has cheated, but this time is different. Kane turned back, a cold, calculating light in his eyes. She is involved in an illegal transfer of funds overseas. If I file for divorce now, my assets and shares will take a serious hit. I nodded slowly, beginning to understand what he was about to suggest. You mean, you want us to work together? Kane looked at me, his gaze sharp as a blade. Exactly. I need someone on the inside like you. And you need a way to get revenge that is smart, effective, and legal. I walked out of the building with a heavy mind, but it felt like a small spark had just been lit inside me. The next morning, I was standing in the middle of the gym, sweat soaking through the back of my shirt. My arms were trembling with fatigue. My calves burned. My breathing was so heavy, it felt like my chest might explode. Come on, Amanda. 10 more reps. Do not quit. The trainer shouted from behind me. I gritted my teeth and looked in the mirror. My face was drenched, my hair a tangled mess, my heavy body shaking from exhaustion. Fat, ugly, pathetic. No, not anymore. I have to change. I clenched my fists, pushed myself up, and went back to pressing the weights. That night, I sat in front of a plate of salad and boiled chicken breast. No dressing, no cheese, just bland green leaves and the dry smell of meat. It felt like I was swallowing mouthfuls of humiliation. I used to prepare healthy meals for him. Now it was just me and this plate of greens. My phone vibrated. A notification popped up. Mark and Stella had just checked in from the Maldives, with a photo attached, smiling brightly. Enjoy it, be happy. You will both see what I can do. I pushed the plate aside and opened my laptop. A page from a business management textbook appeared on the screen. I started studying. Line after line, formula after formula, slide after slide. I read as if I were swallowing every past humiliation and forging it into a weapon. Looks can change, but the mind is the real weapon. I have to become better, stronger, 2 months later, I walked out of a salon in Soho. The wind slipped through my newly cut honey brown hair. For the first time in a long while, I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. Different not only on the outside, but in her eyes as well. There was still a long road ahead, but at least I had begun. Mark, just wait and see. The real game was only beginning now. I stood in the organic food aisle at Whole Foods, holding a bag of salad mix without dressing. My body was slimmer than before, my waistline now clearly defined, but inside, it was still a battle that had never really ended. I told myself silently as I glanced at the greasy foods on the shelves across from me. I have to stay disciplined. Salad, boiled chicken breast, hungry, it is fine. The pain from that day was 1,000 times worse. A voice sounded behind me, making me jump, a familiar voice laced with mockery. Oh my God. Amanda, still on your grand weight loss journey of the century, are you? I turned around. Mark. He was holding Stella's hand, the two of them looking like they had just stepped out of a luxury brand photo shoot. He was in a black suit with shiny leather shoes, and Stella had a designer bag on her arm, her eyes lined in a cold, sharp shade. He looked me up and down, then curled his lips into a smile. I forced myself to stay calm and swallowed the lump in my throat. I am just buying food. I thought trash like you two did not belong in a place like this. Stella glanced into my cart at the bags of vegetables, a pack of chicken breast, and a box of chia seeds. She laughed like she was watching a comedy. All veggies and chicken breast. Poor thing, it is almost pitiful. Like a rabbit chewing on grass. Mark burst out laughing and patted the designer bag hanging from Stella's shoulder. See, real life is about enjoying yourself. You keep eating rabbit food like that, what are you going to get out of it? Look prettier. At best, you will go from a fat pig to a scrawny rabbit. Still just as useless. I looked at him without a word. I only pressed my lips together and lowered my head as if I were really hurt, then hurried toward the checkout. Once I was out of sight, I drew in a deep breath and whispered in my head, "Keep laughing. Keep looking down on me." That night, I sat in my apartment with my phone on the table in front of me, and Mr. Kane beside me, sipping red wine without taking his eyes off me. Ready. Just follow the plan. I nodded, my hand slightly shaking, but my eyes were no longer the eyes of a woman who cried alone. I hit call. My heart pounded in my chest as the ringing started. Mark. It is Amanda. I am calling to apologize for what happened this afternoon. Mark's voice came through, irritated, like I was some annoying spam caller. What do you want now? I am busy. I slowed my voice, pretending to hesitate. No, it is not that. I know I should not have acted like that. I just wanted to say, I am actually working as an administrative assistant on a small project for Mr. Kane's group. I heard there are going to be some really good positions opening up soon. High salary, I thought you might be interested. Mark let out a dry laugh, his voice full of contempt. You think I need to look for a job? Take a good look at me now? Why would I need to work myself to death? I have Stella already. She takes care of everything. I pretended to be backed into a corner, my voice growing smaller. But I heard the upcoming Golden Dragon project is very important. Anyone who takes part will have a big chance at promotion and an extremely generous bonus. No, I should not have said that. I am sorry. I have to hang up now. I hung up, pretending to panic as if I had just let a secret slip. Mr. Kane set his glass of wine down and nodded in clear satisfaction. Very good. Golden Dragon. The name alone sounds tempting. Someone as greedy as him will not be able to pass that up. I leaned back, my eyes staring into empty space. He had heard all the important words. Secret project, high salary, big bonuses. The seed of greed had been planted. And this time, he would walk into the trap of his own free will, with a smile on his face. And just as we expected, a message from Mark asking to meet came right after. He set a meeting with me at a cafe tomorrow afternoon. I sat alone in the corner of a fancy cafe, right across from the Kane Group headquarters. On the table was my open laptop, the screen showing carefully staged fake documents. Next to it was a steaming cappuccino. I adjusted my posture, glanced quickly around the cafe, then began the act. I lifted my phone to my ear and pretended to make a call, my voice deliberately loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Yes, Mr. Kane? I understand. The Golden Dragon project documents must be kept absolutely confidential. I will draft the contracts and send them back to you before 5 this afternoon. Yes, I am certain nothing will leak out." The moment I finished speaking, the cafe door opened. Mark walked in. He was alone, his eyes scanning the room until they stopped on me. He came over with an air of complete confidence, wearing the familiar smile that had once convinced me it was genuine. "Amanda, what a coincidence. You come here often, too." I pretended to be startled, as if I had not expected to see him, then hurriedly snapped my laptop shut, my voice rushed. "Mark, I have to go meet a client right now. I am sorry." I gathered my things quickly, then stood up and turned to leave. Just before I left the table, I deliberately let a small USB drive slip from my hand. It was labeled Golden Dragon, Original Files. It lay tilted on the edge of the table, exactly where he would see it first. Once I was out of sight, Mark walked over to the now empty table. He picked up the USB, a triumphant smile tugging at his lips, then slipped it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Heaven is on my side. That fool is still as clumsy as ever. That night, in his marble-floored apartment, Mark and Stella sat across from each other with a laptop open between them. He plugged in the USB and began opening the files. The document titles appeared one after another, leaving them both staring, mouths slightly open. "Look at this. The entire project rollout plan. The list of partners. Confidential contract terms. There is even internal information from the investment bank. This is a gold mine." Stella leaned in a little, her eyes never leaving the screen. "But why would she expose this so easily? Are you sure about her?" Mark nodded, slapped his thigh, and laughed loudly. "She is the same as ever. Foolish. Still not over me. She probably thinks she still has a chance to fix things, so she is trying to help. Or maybe she just wants to show off that she works for the Kane Group. She always loved proving herself." Stella glanced at him, a spark of interest and calculation in her eyes. "Then we can use all of this to negotiate with Mr. Kane. If he does not want his business secrets exposed or his competitors getting their hands on them, he will have to pay." Mark looked at Stella and let out a low, harsh laugh. "Exactly. A very large amount of money. Then we will get out of here. Go abroad and live like royalty. No more pretending, no more flattering anyone. We will be the ones controlling this game." The two of them held each other, laughing out loud, their eyes shining as if they were looking at endless stacks of money. But they had no idea the entire contents of the USB were fake, crafted line by Mr. Kane and me. And more importantly, that USB had been fitted with a remote tracking device. In a temporary office equipped with a special monitoring system, Mr. Kane and I sat in front of a screen. The recordings and data captured from the USB appeared clearly on the large display. Mark and Stella's voices came through in full, not a single word missing. They had taken the bait. They not only believed in the fake documents, they were already planning extortion. This was clear criminal behavior. Mr. Kane sat with his arms crossed, his face as frozen as ever. I sat beside him, eyes on the screen, a strange wave of satisfaction rising in my chest. Greed and arrogance had blinded them. They thought they were the ones fishing. They did not realize they were the fish jerking the line. Mr. Kane nodded and lifted the phone to make a call. The police are ready. All we have to do is wait for them to carry out the extortion. I watched the footage of Mark eagerly laying out the blackmail plan, then let out a slow breath. Mark, you once called me foolish. Now let us see who is really being led by the nose. You underestimated me. That was your first mistake, and it is going to be your last. Get ready to face the consequences. I will pay you back for everything, every dollar, every humiliation, every word you ever threw at me. Not a single piece will be left. I cannot even remember how many times I was called a fat pig. But the way Mark burst out laughing and dropped those words one by one that night, when he and Stella were sitting in the penthouse, is something I will never forget. He slapped his thigh and roared with laughter, his eyes blazing like he was about to win big. Perfect. The blackmail email is ready. All I have to do is hit send, and your old husband will have to bow his head. Stella sat close beside him, leaning into Mark's shoulder, her fingers lightly caressing the sparkling diamond necklace at her throat, her eyes bright like someone who had already smelled money. Richard will not dare let his trade secrets leak out. Either he gives us $2 million, or he lets his competitors scoop up all the data. Whatever he chooses, we still win. Mark pulled Stella tighter against him, kissed her on the cheek, and laughed with open contempt. Then we will go to Dubai. Live the life I should have had a long time ago. A villa with a pool, accounts that never run out of money. As for that foolish Amanda, let her cling to her fat body and her poverty. Women like that are born to be left behind. He reached toward the keyboard. His index finger hovered right above the send key. Are you sure? Once I send this, there is no turning back. Stella nodded, her voice firm. Send it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Just as Mark's finger touched the key, the door to the room suddenly swung open. The entire apartment seemed to freeze for a second. Richard Kane walked in first. His appearance was calm, but his eyes were as cold as a steel blade. Sorry to interrupt your little party, but it seems I came at just the right moment to witness a very interesting performance. Mark jolted upright, his phone slipping from his hand and falling onto the carpet. His face went pale, as if all the blood had been drained from it. Mr. Kane, how did you find out? Stella shot to her feet, her hands trembling so hard that the glass of red wine tilted and spilled over the snow-white rug. Richard? What are you doing here? Richard gave a faint smile, but his eyes never left the two people in front of him. I came to watch my wife and her young friend perform. Quite a bold plan, using my own company's confidential documents to threaten me. Unfortunately for you, this play is about to end. I slowly stepped out from behind Mr. Kane. My face was composed, without the slightest ripple of emotion. Mark glared at me, shouting like a drowning man grabbing at a lifeline. It was you! Amanda? You tricked me. You gave me those documents. I took one step forward, my voice steady and clear. That is right. I gave you the files. But did I hold a gun to your head and force you to use them for extortion? Did I put your hand on the keyboard and make you press send? At that moment, two plainclothes officers walked in. One of them quickly secured the laptop, while the other flipped through the documents scattered across the table. The lead officer held up an arrest warrant, his voice hard as steel. Mark Evans, Stella Kane. You are under arrest for theft of trade secrets and extortion. We have complete audio and video evidence of the entire process in which you planned this. Stella snapped her head toward Mark, her face draining of color, her voice shrill. It was him. This was all his idea. He is the mastermind. He used me. I am just a victim. Mark turned to stare at Stella as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Stella, are you insane? You are the one who told me to use Amanda. You are the one who pushed me to send the blackmail email. And now you are putting all the blame on me. Stella burst into tears, mascara streaking down her face, and threw herself at Richard, clutching his arm with both hands. Richard. My love, I am sorry. I was so stupid. He seduced me. Please forgive me. We can start over. I will fix everything. Richard pulled his arm out of her grip, his eyes full of contempt and disgust. Start over. After everything you have done. Let us talk about that in court. The officers stepped forward to handcuff them both. As they passed me, Mark struggled, trying to grab my hand, his voice pleading. Amanda, you have to help me. You know I am not a bad person. I was just blinded for a moment. You can testify for me, can you not? I am begging you. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice gentle, but as hard as stone. Do you remember? Just a few months ago, you told your friends you would rather be with an old woman than stay with a fat pig. I took another step forward so he could clearly see the woman standing in front of him. You chose your own path. And now the one you used to call a fat pig is standing here, watching your hero fall. I am no longer the naive girl you could so easily deceive. I tilted my head, my voice turning sharp like scissors cutting through skin. Carry the consequences of your choices yourself, Mark. His mouth fell open, his whole body seeming to drain of life. He could not get a single word out. He only stayed silent as the officers led him away, his eyes still fixed on me. But to me, that look no longer meant anything. It was only the gaze of a loser, a man who had destroyed himself. The courtroom that morning was strangely quiet. The air felt thick and heavy, like a velvet curtain draped over every row of seats. I sat beside Mr. Kane at the plaintiff's table, back straight, my eyes steady without a single flicker. The judge looked up from the file, his stern voice ringing through the room. Defendant Stella, do you admit to all of your actions? Stella shot to her feet. Her eyes were red, her makeup a ruined mess from tears. Your Honor, I confess, it was all Mark. He deliberately approached me, used sweet words to trick me into stealing the documents. He is the mastermind. I am only a victim he manipulated. A murmur rose from the gallery. Mark's lawyer immediately sprang to his feet, his rebuttal sharp and firm. Your Honor, this is blatant defamation. Defendant Stella is the one who directly stole the data. Defendant Mark was merely dragged in and did not take part in the planning from the very beginning. Mark stood up as well, his face as pale as someone who had lost all his blood. He looked at me, his voice tight like he was about to choke. Amanda, say something for me. You know what kind of person I am. I was just reckless for a moment. I did not mean it. I am not that kind of man. You used to love me. The entire courtroom turned its gaze toward me. I took a deep breath, stood up, and stepped forward. My eyes met those of every single member of the panel. Your Honor, as the person directly involved in collecting the evidence, I can confirm this. Both defendants took an active part and acted completely of their own free will. They conspired out of greed, not because of threats or coercion. Defendant Mark was never forced. On the contrary, he was the one who first proposed the extortion plan. Every word, every action of his came from his true nature. I turned to look at Mark. He stood frozen, His hands were gripping the edge of the defendant's table, his eyes gone blank as if someone had slapped him in the face with the very past he used to sneer at. The judge brought the gavel down hard on the desk. His voice rang out, firm and final. Based on the evidence presented, this court hereby sentences defendant Mark Evans to 2 years in prison for theft of trade secrets and extortion. Defendant Stella Kane is sentenced to 3 years in prison on the same charges. In the parking lot out back, Mark was led to the car by the officers. He kept turning his head, looking around for someone he knew, clutching his phone and trying to call someone, but no one picked up. In his pocket, his phone kept buzzing with calls and notifications instead. Social media was flooding with his arrest photos at a dizzying speed, followed by harsh comments. Pathetic. Thought that pretty face meant he was something special. Cheated on Kane's wife. Could not have asked for a harsher ending. Classic example of a man who is greedy and stupid at the same time. I sat in the car, looking at Mark through the window. He was in the back of the police vehicle, head hanging low, eyes empty, like the whole world had just pulled its support from under his feet all at once. I turned my face away. There was nothing left to hold on to. It was over. The long stretch of dark days had finally come to a close. No more resentment. No more hatred. Only a sense of peace and a future opening up ahead, wide and free. And this time, I would walk on my own 2 feet, no longer letting anyone lead me. I stood in the wings, the stage lights in front of me blazing like a dream taking shape. The powerful background music filled the air, making my heart race as if it wanted to step out onto the stage with me. 2 years. Everything had changed in ways I could never have imagined. I looked down at my own hands. Once, they used to tremble because of a phone call from Mark. Now, those same hands were holding a microphone, about to speak in front of hundreds of guests. It was not just a different body, not just a name printed in bold on the backdrop. Amanda was no longer only my name. It was a message. Confidence. Strength. Light. I stepped into the center of the stage lights. The dress I had designed hugged my body in exactly the way I used to hate. The curves that had once been called excess fat were now the highlights of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Applause thundered. Camera flashes flickered. A reporter pushed to the front row and raised a mic. Ms. Amanda, how do you feel now that your first collection has been such a huge success? I looked straight into the lens, not dodging, not hiding behind false modesty. I feel grateful. Grateful for the insults in the past. Grateful for the falls that forced me to stand back up. And grateful for the present, for giving me the courage to pursue my passion. In that exact moment, I felt a strange gaze coming from the back of the hall. I turned my head and saw a thin figure in a wrinkled suit that looked like it had just been borrowed from a thrift store. Mark. He stood there. He did not come any closer. He only watched me with eyes filled with a mix of shock, regret, and shame. In the end, you did show up, but this time, I did not need you here to know that I had won. I needed you here so I could see for myself that I had truly stepped out of the darkness you once buried me in. After the show, in the VIP area reserved for special guests, I was talking with a designer from Milan when Mark appeared. He dragged his feet with each step, as if every movement was payment for what he had done. Amanda, let me apologize. I gave my guest a small signal to excuse themselves, then turned back to him. You do not need to apologize. It is all in the past. Mark looked up. His eyes were red, his lips trembling like he wanted to say 100 things, but could not string a sentence together. No, I know I was wrong. All those days in prison, I only thought about you. I still love you. You are the only one who ever made me feel like I was not pretending. Can you give me a chance to make things right?" I gently pulled my hand away from his as he tried to touch me. My smile was not mocking. It was the last bit of pity for someone I had once loved with all my heart. Love. "You once said you would rather be with an old woman than be with a fat pig. Now that I am no longer fat and have a bit of success, suddenly you say you love me. Tell me, is your love priced by a woman's body or by her fame?" Mark shook his head, his voice rushed. "No, that is not it. I really mean it. You know that." I cut him off, my voice calm but firm, like a verdict that cannot be overturned. "Mark, do you really think a woman who has survived everything to stand here today still cares about a man who betrayed her just because he got tired of her body? Do you think I would go back to someone who measured a person's worth in pounds and bank accounts?" Mark stood frozen, his face as white as paper. The look in his eyes held no hope anymore, only collapse. So there is no way back, not even the smallest chance. I shook my head, my smile gentle but unshakable. "No, my road is in front of me. As for you, live well with the choices you made. Goodbye, Mark." I turned and walked away, the hem of my evening gown trailing lightly behind me like a phoenix wing leaving the ashes. Beside me is David, a young architect whose eyes are always as warm as the first sunlight of spring. He holds my hand as we look together at an abstract painting hanging in the center of the room. "How do you feel about this painting? It reminds me of you. Strong, free, and full of color." I turn to him and smile. "You are flirting with me again. But I like it." I rest my head on David's shoulder. Outside, the sound of voices and footsteps fills the space. But in that moment, my world is completely at peace. Real happiness does not come from revenge. It does not come from watching the person who hurt you fall to their knees. Happiness comes from peace of mind, from being able to be yourself and being loved for exactly that. As for Mark, he is nothing more than a blurred memory now. A costly lesson I paid for with tears, but also the lesson that helped me grow up. I squeeze David's hand and walk out of the gallery with him. In the middle of the noisy city, in the middle of the crowded streets, I still feel light as a leaf, because I know that for the first time in my life, I am truly living, and for the first time, I am being loved the right way. Women who have been hurt, who have been called useless, ugly, fat, or who have been betrayed in the cruelest ways, are not sentenced to live buried in that past forever. There are wounds that once made us feel like we would never be able to lift our heads again. But if we are brave enough to walk through them and determined enough to stand back up, those scars become the foundation for a stronger, more beautiful, and more fearless version of ourselves. I am not telling this story to ask for pity. I am telling it to remind anyone who is at the bottom of despair that you deserve happiness. And you do not need anyone to validate that except yourself. Thank you for listening to Amanda's Journey. If this story moved you, or if you saw yourself in it, leave a comment and share how you feel. And do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the Revenge Diary channel so you can keep following more powerful, inspiring stories grounded in real life. See you again on the next journeys.